Anyone who has read the Tao Te Ching knows that this book is divided into two parts, the Tao Ching and the Te Ching. Tao and Te, while inseparable, carry different meanings. So what does Te mean in the eyes of Lao Tzu? What is the standard of a truly good person? And how would you judge whether someone possesses virtue or not? In the society we live in, there are good people and bad people. From ancient times to the present, some have abandoned evil paths to turn back toward goodness, while others have chosen to leave the path of virtue and become wicked. From childhood, parents and teachers have always taught us to become good people. But as we grow older, we increasingly feel confused about what it truly means to be good. The more life experience we gain, the more we even begin to question whether we should remain good at all. In the real world, the standards of goodness vary greatly, and as a result, many people unintentionally end up living like bad people. Grow Wise welcomes you, dear viewers. Listening to one valuable book each day can help you live a more enlightened life and elevate your thinking to a higher level. Today, we will explore the meaning of Te in the Tao Te Ching and learn how to recognize a truly good person. In 1973, archaeologists discovered a version of the Tao Te Ching from the Han Dynasty at the Mawangdui site, and it differs from the commonly known version today. This ancient version places the Te Ching before the Tao Ching, leading some scholars to suggest that the book should actually be called the Te Tao Ching. This arrangement highlights the importance of Te in shaping Lao Tzu's philosophical system. We know that Taoist thought uses the Tao to explore the relationship between nature, society, and human beings. But then, why did Lao Tzu also write the Te Ching? Is Te simply about being a good person? What do you think a good person looks like? In ancient times, people often believed that as long as one met the standards of sainthood, wisdom, righteousness, benevolence, and courage could be called a good person, someone who possesses virtue. However, in a later passage of the Zhuangzi, the main character presents a counter-viewpoint. During the spring and autumn period, there was a notorious bandit named Dao Ji. He made a living through robbery but referred to himself as a saint. In fact, he truly believed he was a sage. Why? He argued that being able to discover wealth inside a room is called wisdom. Being the first to rush in and seize it is called courage. Being willing to take responsibility and stay behind for one's companions is called righteousness. Being able to plan a successful robbery is called intelligence. And finally, distributing the spoils fairly is called benevolence. Dao Ji's perspective sounds ironic, yet it reveals an important truth. There is no fixed standard for what makes a good person. Everyone perceives goodness differently. Why do we feel so confused about whether we should even try to be good? The writer George Orwell once wrote a play called Tea House. The story takes place in 1898, shortly after the failed 100 Days Reform. In a tea house in old Beijing, a poor mother and her daughter, dressed in rags, walk in. The daughter wears a blade of grass in her hair, a traditional sign that she is offering herself for sale. The tea house is a place of leisure for the nobility, so when the wealthy patrons see someone of such low status, they become curious. Soon, the owner, John, orders his staff to drive the two women out. However, another customer, Thomas, who is known for his kindness, mocks John for refusing to help the poor. Thomas then instructs the staff to bring 2 bowls of noodles for the mother and daughter. At this point, you might think Thomas is clearly a virtuous and good person. But what happens next may change your judgment. John says that 1 bowl of noodles cannot save a nation, and helping the poor is not just about giving food. He believes that to save the country, one must build factories and develop the economy. At this moment, our perception shifts. Compared to Thomas, John now seems to possess greater virtue, to be the better person. But the story takes another turn. Years later, John spends his entire life running factories, but in the end, his fortune is completely seized first by foreign invaders, then by his own countrymen. The factory passes through many hands, and in his old age, John concludes with a bitter lesson. If you have money, spend it on pleasure and indulgence. Stop doing good deeds. His deep confusion at this moment is whether his lifelong pursuit of being a good person was a mistake. Can we find an answer in the Tao Te Ching? According to Lao Tzu, Tao is the natural law governing the world, and Te is the act of living in accordance with that law. We can see this clearly in chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching. It states, "The highest virtue is not virtuous, therefore it has virtue. The lowest virtue never loses sight of virtue, therefore it has no virtue." This means that a person of great virtue does not boast or show off their virtue, and precisely because of this, they truly possess it. A person who does good deeds from the heart, not for fame or personal gain, is the one who truly has virtue. To understand this fully, we must clarify what Lao Tzu means by Lao Tzu says, "He gives life to all things but does not possess them. He acts but does not control. He leads but does not dominate." This is called the mysterious virtue. What does this mean? It means nurturing all things, helping them grow, but not claiming them as your own. It means guiding without ruling over them. This is the highest form of virtue. It is like raising fish without treating them as your property, without interfering in their lives, allowing them to live freely as they are meant to. This is what Lao Tzu calls superior virtue. In other words, Lao Tzu does not support raising children merely for the purpose of being cared for in old age. From his view, just as heaven and earth give birth to all things to follow their natural course, raising a child out of selfish motives only to be supported in old age is not genuine love, but a form of transaction. From this perspective, following nature is superior virtue, while raising children for personal benefit is inferior virtue. Next, Lao Tzu says, "The lowest virtue never loses sight of virtue, therefore it has no virtue." This means that a person who constantly shows off their moral integrity actually lacks true virtue. If someone continually tries to make others aware that they are virtuous, they have in fact become someone without virtue. To better understand this concept, let us consider the idea of virtue in Confucianism. Confucianism always encourages people to become virtuous. Feudal society established strict moral standards such as the three bonds ruler and subject, father and son, husband and wife, and the five virtues, benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and faithfulness. Confucianism upholds these moral standards and calls on people to follow them. However, according to Lao Tzu, these moral norms can easily become tools used by those in power to control others. For example, kings often use moral standards like loyalty to demand obedience from their subjects, even enacting harsh laws such as if the king wants his servant to die, the servant must die. But in Lao Tzu's eyes, a truly virtuous ruler nurtures all things without possessing them, leads without dominating. That is the mysterious virtue. Human beings are born with natural instincts. Everyone desires freedom and equality. But when someone tries to construct an image of being good, they actually become someone without virtue, a hypocrite. The world has its own laws. Humans are born with innate nature, but to conform to Confucian moral standards and gain approval from elders, people are forced to learn how to be fake, to pretend to be good according to social norms. Is this truly virtue? When people wear masks and become artificial, they become more likely to commit evil. For example, on a field there are both sheep and wolves. Should we help the sheep or the wolf? If we help the sheep, the wolf will starve. If we help the wolf, the sheep will be eaten. In a natural ecosystem, non-interference is the highest virtue. Similarly, in human society, when a society overly emphasizes a single moral standard, it can disrupt the entire ecosystem and even encourage the growth of evil. Take the concept of patriotism. As the writer Mark Twain said, government is merely a servanta, temporary servant of the people. Deciding what is right or wrong, who is patriotic or not, should not be the exclusive right of the government. Human nature is to satisfy one's own needs first, then help others. But the famous moral story of Kong Rong giving up pears forces people to abandon their own needs to follow an example. Is this truly virtue? That is a question for us to reflect on and discuss. What is superior virtue? Let us continue reading chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching. Superior virtue acts without intention. Inferior virtue acts with intention. This means a person with superior virtue follows nature without deliberate interference, thus not bound by fixed moral standards. In contrast, a person with inferior virtue always appears moral and deliberately acts according to those standards. One who acts out of kindness without seeking praise or display is truly free from external moral constraints. On the other hand, one who acts out of moral duty and wants to show off their virtue is different. As for someone who follows rituals, if they do not receive the expected response, they may break natural laws and force outcomes. The difference between superior and inferior virtue lies here. Superior virtue acts naturally without pursuing any specific standard, while inferior virtue always acts with the goal of meeting a moral norm, yet ultimately violates natural law. There is a story about a great river. A senior monk, a young monk, and a woman happen to meet and need to cross the river. The senior monk sees that the woman cannot cross, so he carries her across. After walking a few miles, the young monk can no longer contain himself and asks his master, "How could you touch a woman?" The senior monk replies, "You still remember that? I forgot it long ago." This is the difference between superior and inferior virtue. A person with superior virtue acts according to natural law, does not care about outside opinions, and is not influenced by external moral standards. In contrast, a person with inferior virtue strictly follows fixed moral rules. Some people always talk about kindness and righteousness, but if no one acknowledges them, they loudly promote their own virtue everywhere. This easily turns them into people without virtue. We continue reading the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu says, "When the great Tao is abandoned, then comes virtue. When virtue is lost, then comes benevolence. When benevolence is lost, then comes righteousness. When righteousness is lost, then comes ritual." This is quite clear, yet it is the key to understanding Te in Lao Tzu's view. When society loses the Tao, people begin to emphasize virtue. When people no longer respect natural laws, they need moral standards to restrain each other. If virtue becomes just a slogan, benevolence appears. When benevolence is gone, people rely on righteousness. When righteousness disappears, ritual emerges. Lao Tzu says ritual is the thinning of faith and honesty and the beginning of disorder. He means that ritual arises from the lack of sincerity and trust and marks the start of chaos. For example, ritual emerged because humanity lost benevolence, righteousness, and morality. When moral standards are lost, people turn to rituals, daily rules that are easy for everyone to follow. But precisely because of this, rituals are easily faked and exploited. We continue reading chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu says, "Pretentious knowledge is the flower of the Tao and the beginning of foolishness." This means those who come forward using elaborate techniques to appear moral actually only possess the outer shell of virtue. But this is the beginning of ignorance. Earlier, anyone who has studied explanations of the Tao Te Ching knows that in Taoist thought there is no clear distinction between good and evil, nor specific standards for right and wrong. This might make people worry that without moral standards the world would fall into chaos. In reality, Lao Tzu emphasizes that we do not need to interfere in the division between good and evil. Ecosystems have their own natural laws, and our non-interference is itself superior virtue. When it comes to benevolence and morality, is someone truly virtuous just because they talk about it? We should not only listen to what people say, but observe their actions. If they emphasize benevolence and ritual, but violate natural laws, what value does that benevolence hold? It is merely a tool to exploit others, and they are truly people without virtue. In chapter 18 of the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu says, "When the great Tao is abandoned, there is talk of benevolence and righteousness. When wisdom appears, there is great deception. When family harmony is lost, there is talk of filial piety. When the state is in chaos, loyal officials appear." According to Lao Tzu, when a society overly emphasizes moral standards, it shows that the society has already strayed from natural law. Instead of solving the root problem, people merely introduce new standards to compensate for the loss of Tao. This causes rules to grow increasingly complex until society collapses. Is this view correct? Each of us holds our own answer within. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Returning to George Orwell's tea house story, was Thomas a person of superior virtue? Was John? Surely you now have your own answer. According to Taoist thought, ancient rulers promoted Confucian moral standards, turning people into slaves of morality. Ironically, this created opportunities for those in power to exploit morality for control. Of course, Lao Tzu does not advise us to completely abandon moral standards. He says that only the morality within the great Tao is superior virtue, while empty words about benevolence and righteousness are actually the cause of chaos. And this is not the kind of morality we truly desire. So, what is the relationship between tea and Tao? After hearing this analysis, you may now understand tea more deeply. The relationship between Te and Tao can be summarized as follows. In the Tao Te Ching, tea is not the same as the modern meaning of morality. Today, when we speak of virtue, we usually refer to noble moral qualities and character. But in the Tao Te Ching, Te is the manifestation of Tao in all things, the way humans live in accordance with natural law and follow the objective principles of Tao. In summary, Te can be understood in 3 key points. First, Te is harmony with Tao. In ancient Chinese, Te is phonetically close to De, meaning to obtain. Lao Tzu uses this word to mean receiving or obtaining something. But what is obtained? We can find the answer from Lao Tzu's student, Zhuangzi. He said, all things receive from Tao, and this is called Ti. When receive Tao, what they receive is Ti. Thus, Ti is following the inherent nature and qualities of all things. Tao is the invisible core. Ti is the concrete expression of that nature. Second, Ti is the mediator between Tao and all things. Tao is transcendental, does not change or disappear with things. But for Tao to influence all things, there must be a mediator. That mediator is Te. Te is not only the natural characteristic of things, but also the connection between Tao and all things. Third, Te expresses the naturalness of all things. A tree has the nature of a tree. A flower has the nature of a flower. Once things are born, they do not change their inherent nature. For example, a tiger is born a tiger and carries the nature of a tiger. There is a story about an animal world in Africa. A lion, raised from childhood among other animals, one day hears the roar of another lion and realizes it does not belong with the animals around it. It follows the roar and returns to its pride. This is the expression of the natural essence of all things. Hegel said that nature is necessity. Every being in the universe has its own natural attribute. Once formed, it becomes inevitable, like the changing of the 4 seasons, spring, summer, autumn, winter. The cycle of seasons is a natural phenomenon and an inevitability. When summer comes, the weather naturally becomes hot. When winter arrives, the climate naturally turns cold. Ancient people said that chrysanthemums grown in the south smelled different from those in the north because the soil and water differ. All things grow according to their natural nature, and only then do they retain their unique form. The diversity of all things and the balance of the ecosystem are precisely the achievements of Te. Therefore, Taoism emphasizes following nature so that all things can develop and change according to their true nature. The principle in the relationship between humans and all things is Wu Wei. Lao Tzu said Wu Wei means not violating natural law, acting in accordance with the true nature and laws of things. When all things develop naturally according to their own Tao, that is their Ti, when humans follow their own nature and act in harmony with the natural Tao, that is the superior virtue of humanity. Thank you for watching today's content. This week's summary and interpretation of the Tao Te Ching ends here. If you have personal thoughts about the Tao Te Ching, please leave a comment and share. If you find this content valuable, don't forget to share it with your friends and loved ones. This is GrowWise, signing off. Until next time.